Support Pro Play Games on Patreon.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy Danny G from PPG, and I got some incredible guests for you today in podcast episode 2 of the Row Nights podcast. We got the boy Dan Vang, we got Different Fight, we got our boy Yadam, and we got True Pain Gaming. What's up, guys?
Yo, what's up?
What's good? What's good?
Hello.
Happy to be back, man.
Nice audio, Yadam. Just kidding. Um, so today's podcast, we're gonna talk about players who play different games, the ups, the downs. Where do you find yourself with your main games, your side games? Do your side games become your main games? Different formats that lead you away. How's it like coming back to your main games or going back to your side games? So let's dive into it. So different fight. You you commented Digi Showdown. Your main game is Vanguard. How do you feel like coming back and forth to those games? Like, do you find like points in Vanguard where you don't like? Do you like points at Digi you don't like? Do you like move back and forth? How is your mentality with each game?
So Vanguard's always been my main game ever since I got into it like 11 years ago. To the point that I never really like take a break from it, even if the meta is bad. But like if it is bad, then I usually do play other games on the side a bit more, but I still kind of keep up with it, play test to a minimum, or at least like make content to that kind of like minimum. So it's never really like off in that sense. But with Digimon, I just basically liked the way that the game worked when it got revealed, and then I was like, okay, if it comes in English, I'll pick it up, and then it did, and our local community really just grew very quickly for it as well, and because of that, it was very motivating to play. So Digimon, I do commentary for Bandai every now and again. And in general, like when the game first came out, I was even like doing content on my second channel for the game a fair bit. But the main reason why I play is just because it's fun, it's different, and our local scene for it is just amazing. Like the people are really cool and they motivate you to play more. There have been periods where I'm a lot more off with the game than on. In particular, in EX1, I think I went to locals once in that entire time period before BT7 came out because I just really didn't like the meta whatsoever. And prior to that, I think there was a time during BT5 where things got pretty stale because of a lot of the delays. Like BT4 and BT5, I think in particular, we had those couple periods where it was just like, oh, set's coming up and it's delayed. And so that kind of wait, I think, definitely would make me kind of go through that kind of like lull period. But otherwise, I just kind of like play the game on the side because of my locals, and so I'm always keeping up with it thanks to my locals, and then kind of looking at things coming up in Japan as well. As I guess people now know by the time this is coming out that I am moving to Japan, and now we'll be switching to their format as well. So the in terms of balancing, it's just basically it is kind of I do treat it as my side game, and as a result, I also am very conscious of my limitations. So I'll never be as well versed in Digimon or any of the other games I play on the side as I am with Vanguard because the priority is just very different. So like I do play in tournaments, I do try to learn as much as possible about the existing meta and the deck that I play, but there will always be like when let's say if I'm doing commentary for Vanguard and some spicy deck that nobody's ever heard of comes up, I can still figure out how it works and explain it and usually like break it down very pretty quickly without even knowing how it works necessarily, just from reading effects and seeing how they work together. In Digimon, there'll be times where I'll know the meta really well, but then I'll sit down to play against someone that's playing something I've never seen before. Like I think the first time I played against D Brigade, I was like, what is this? And so that's kind of one of the limitations. It's like, okay, if I can know the meta, but the moment something that's a little bit more spicy comes up, it's like, oh, suddenly like I'm just kind of blanking. So I think that's one of like the very conscious limitations that I have when it comes to Vanguard versus other games. But yeah, so that's basically my kind of split there, I suppose.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that specific format, the Set 5 and EX2 format. I know you, True Pain, like you also had an issue with that format, like the Ice Walls at 4, and Lord Nightmon just oppressing the format, and then you went to Yu-Gi-Oh! It's actually become a meme in the community, like, hey, didn't this guy quit? Why is he making Digimon content? Like, how is it like going to Yu-Gi-Oh! having a refresher to come back into Digimon.
Yeah. So like that quitting video, like you said, it has become a really big meme, and I understand the meme. It's pretty funny because I legit sold my entire collection. I had at least a playset of every single card, and so coming back into the game now, I'm like fishing for cards, and I'm like, okay, I need to pick up my Sunarizumons. I see Sunarizumons like $30. I'm like, this hurts. Or I need to pick up Magna Angemons. They're going up to like 50 or something. So that sucks. But also at the same time, like DifferentFight said, BT5 and EX1 were such bad formats in my opinion. BT5 was Lord Nightmon deck, and it was awful to play, in my opinion, until the very end. The very end, when I picked up D Brigade Yellow, I had a lot of fun. But until then, I was really not having Lord Nightmon because my idea when I play a Tier 0 deck, so in this case, probably Lord Nightmon, I want to be confident. I want to be confident that I can win the mirror match every time. And with Lord Nightmon and with Blue Hybrid currently, I don't feel like I can do that. So I didn't really touch that deck, and I didn't really touch Blue, even though I've practiced with them and I've tried. I don't feel confident enough in those colors that I can win in those matchups, especially if my opponent is playing some sort of spice that I am not aware of. Um, so I felt a lot of burnout in BT5. And then BT6 is the end of BT6 right before EX dropped is when I made that quitting video. And I was already feeling a lot of burnout from BT5. And so BT6 rolled around, and I was super hyped because Jesmon is one of my all-time favorite Digimon. I picked up the deck's max rarity. It cost me an arm and a leg. And then I never played the deck because I could never ever draw the level 5 Savior Huckmon. And it was so demoralizing. Uh, that video I made, I had played in a 8-round tournament the day before. It was one of the Bandai ones. And I played Jesmon, and I just got bodied by the mirror so many times just because I didn't draw Savior Huckmon. And it was so infuriating that I quit, you know. And looking back, right, I think I did quit at a good time, air quotes quit, because obviously I'm back and I was only gone about a month. Um, the EX1 format, a lot of my teammates played it. Diego got fourth at nationals with Lilith Loop during that format, and I just hear the nightmares about Ice Wall. You know, like you have lethal on board. You pass your opponent on one. There's nothing they can do, and then they just ice wall you and win, and just blow you out next turn. It is such a poorly designed card in that sense. That I am glad I took a break at that time. And going to Yu-Gi-Oh, I actually got clowned on a lot because that video is one of the few videos I made that was unscripted, just because I wanted to get my raw feelings. Um, and I said things that I was just like thinking, and then they didn't make sense. Like a lot of the memes are like, I say it's a turn one Digimon's a turn 1 turn game, and then people are like, well, you're gonna go play Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm like, okay, I guess you're right, but like what I mean is that Digimon is like, you know, I chip you, I poke you early game with Jesmon, and then I swing for game with Jesmon. Um, and I find that really boring. At least like Yu-Gi-Oh is a game where I can go play it, and because of the implications of side decking in Yu-Gi-Oh, there's not really a bad matchup, right? So like if I'm playing like Dragon Link and I go play against like Brave Prank Kid, like I inherently have a bad matchup to that deck, but because of my side deck, I can side things in like Lancia and be able to play the game still. So in that sense, because of the more interaction between players in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's more like a puzzle the way I think about it. So it's like if you don't if you don't have the cards to break your opponent's board or you can't stop them, then you just uh you know, you scoop it up and you go next. And I don't see anything wrong with that. But I know a lot of players don't like that. They like the back and forth, and I like the back and forth too. That's why I like side decking and stuff. So yeah, my only like I go to Yu-Gi-Oh for the interaction. For me, Digimon's interaction purely comes from the security, and because it's randomized, I don't enjoy that much. Um, and that's kind of why I fell off of Standard Vanguard. I still play a lot of Premium, but Standard Vanguard, I used to play a lot in like set one, and then getting hit by like an over trigger made me want to like cry. So, yeah, I guess that's my thoughts.
Oh yeah, the over trigger to secure the defense
Yeah,
really gets me. I really like the standard format of Vanguard just because like I think with any game that has alternate formats, the standard format has to thrive for the game to kind of survive. I don't know how anyone else like feels about that because like if like Digimon, like if you were, or like Yu-Gi-Oh, like if you were to purely play Goat, like how does the game survive through the standard method is
true,
what
and
I'm
that's
wondering.
There's
another.
oh,
Oh, go ahead, Yana.
I feel like every game has like similarities, right? So as you were saying, like Yu-Gi-Oh's interaction comes from like you having specific hand traps or setting outs to people's boards and things like that. But like the same could be said about Digimon, right? So like both games are a very much do you have it kind of game, if you know what I'm saying. Do you have the
I
Do you
agree.
have the Ash? Do you have this? Do you have the Jessamon? Do you have the Savior? These specific cards, and like that's kind of interesting in card games, right? Like, and in these formats that we're talking about, these Lord Nightmon formats and EX1 Ice Wall formats, you can put your opponent to like the one and be like, here we go. Do you have the Ice Wall? They have the Ice Wall. And you're like, all right, gaming. You try to play around that, and then you have like your own play, and then do they have it again? And that's what like card games come and go. I believe that some formats are just like idealized, right? Like you remember them, they're nostalgic. You're like, I had so much fun during this format. It felt fair, and all these things. I think that's why people go back to Go. Because
Agreed.
Goat is a format that very much takes a lot of interaction, takes a lot of turns. It's very skill based. The cards are very powerful. But if you didn't play during the Goat time, it's very hard to like get into it. Like if you weren't there, it's like it's just another format. Like you don't really get that oomph from it. Uh, Coming from a Yu-Gi-Oh background, my favorite format was the Necroz, Shadal, Satellarknight format that happened. BA, that format was, in my opinion, one of my favorite formats. All those decks were super powerful, so different, um, and I really enjoyed the back and forth during that time. So I'll go back to that format with friends sometimes if they feel like it, but it's just a for fun thing. Whereas in Digimon, I have different like I actually enjoy every format that's been put out for EX. After BT5, actually, I really enjoyed BT6. EX1 in the beginning when everyone was not on Isowall and we were just having fun with EX cards. It was really fun, and then we all decided to be really strong meta people and play 4 Isowalls in our decks, and then it was kind of a little bit more difficult. Then this new set with hybrids was really fun, and now we've all moved to blue hybrids, so I'm like, okay, this set is also not very fun anymore, and so on and so forth. I see it's very interesting how like the beginning of the set the game is super duper fun. You have all this variety, all these cool decks coming up. You're just excited about the new cards, wanting to try out new strategies. Then someone figures the set out, and we're doomed. I don't know if that's how you guys feel, but at least
I
Yeah,
that's
agree.
how
yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like at my locals. But because everyone just starts playing the same deck, and then that's why I kind of do like side decking. That's why I do like the mulligan system. Even though side decking was brought down to 5 so far in the unofficial Ultimate Cup tournaments, that 5 card side deck might give me a little wiggle room to not, die to everyone that's playing the same deck. And with that being said, I'm actually kind of afraid of the direction that things are going. Everyone keeps showing me BT9, and I'm excited for BT9. I get to play these X antibody decks, and every single deck is an OTK from the back. That is,
Yep.
there's like no interaction, and I'm extremely afraid of the fact that it basically becomes Lord Nightmon, Just Mon format, whereas do you have it format? And if my opponent draws the cards, I have no interaction and I die. So hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully I can figure out a way to not have that happen because that seems like a rough time.
There's also one thing I wanted to pick up on what Trupian was talking about like interaction, is that I think interaction in different card games is always kind of discussed quite heavily. Like in Vanguard, people always say, "Oh, there's no interaction because there's like no there's no hand trap, there's no like response timing." But then then you can say like, "Oh, but guarding is an interaction, and like damage mapping is an interaction, and like all those little things." Whereas for Digimon, for me, I think while security is an interaction, I think the game is very much built on the interaction of just memory, right? It's like you are always dictating the tempo of your opponent. opponent, and how much you commit will determine how much your opponent wants to commit. Whether you commit little, that means they either have to commit something huge to try to make a comeback, and if they fail, they're probably dead. And if you commit too much, for a ballsy play, then chances are it might come back to bite you and things like that. And it's kind of like reading the situation, knowing the meta, knowing what your opponent's deck wants to do. And I think that is something that I really appreciate about Digimon from the very start, because it's kind of similar to, for example, like Shadowverse and Pokemon, where Pokemon is I think the weirdest, because the game is the closest to solitaire that a TCG can get, I think, and I love the game, but you can search for virtually anything. Your whole deck, you start the game by looking through your deck to find out what's in your, like, quote unquote security, right? And that way you confirm, you know what you're playing without and what you need to, like, draw into, because your, like, quote unquote security goes to your hand when you take it. And like the whole game's interaction and like the high skill ceiling, it comes from essentially putting down threats and preparing and setting up a board that makes your opponent play awkwardly, and or like makes your opponent kind of like fall for a bluff or fall for a setup that they didn't see coming, that leads to you like getting lethal. But you usually in that game, like you have to plan for lethal so many turns ahead. Like you have to plan out your game plan. Like turn one, you see your hand, you see what you're gonna do, your matchup, and you start planning for the next like 5-6 turns. And people say it's the game with the least interaction, but that in itself is also an interaction, because you have to think already about the matchup, and then when your opponent does something, you might have to switch that plan completely, right? So it's this kind of like mental kind of battle going on between both players. And then again with Yu-Gi-Oh, I think like Yu-Gi-Oh Magic, I think are the most obvious ones, because they really have like interaction built into them with like just counter timing. So I think it's really interesting to like discuss that, because Digimon in particular, I think for me is it's very interesting how I've always said this from the very start when it came out. It's the game that really shows how greedy you are as a person. It really shows like your kind of your own nature as a person, like how greedy you are, how risk taking, or like how willing you are to take risks, and like how much do you know the meta, and how will that be rewarded throughout the game, and through how much you're gonna give your opponent resources, and how much you're gonna commit to your own plays at which stage of the game, right?
I completely agree with you. I think Digimon, there's many times where you don't have an option but to be greedy, right? You're forced by the game state. I need to make this play or I lose.
Yep.
And oftentimes you make the play and then lose anyways because that's
Mm-hmm.
just life. But definitely, I went on a rant earlier, but I will like to point out there are some cards in Digimon. They're very limited, but do have that quote unquote interaction that I think we're looking for. I want to specifically highlight the Mini Tamer and Analog
Oh,
Tamer.
purple Mimi. Oh my gosh,
Purple
that
Mimi.
is what I.
Yep.
And Kari, I love those cards as a design.
Those cards are super cool. They're very limited. We don't have a lot, and I want to also include analog into that step as well, because I've seen people trip over those cards so many times. Like they'll play a Death Claw, go to 0, and I'm just like Mimi pass turn, start out with Memory Tamer, or like they'll swing a security pass turn off of like 4 Karis because of Yellow Hybrid having a billion Karis. Um, so there is a little bit more interaction, but I agree with DifferentFight with the fact that the memory gauge system is the main interactive point. Like this game is a game that everything you do, every action that you take, gives your opponent X amount of actions. So although some decks can, surpass this, aka Lilith Loop, you put them to 1 and you're like, all right, they should have little interaction. They go to 40 every single turn. So it is really different to tell. But I think there is a good amount of interaction in this game. I don't know how. I actually don't know how you could add any more, because if there were things like quote unquote like hand traps or counterplay and things like that, then the game would be
I think it
a
would
little
make the
more
game really bad.
a little bit more
Yes.
complicated. Even as it is, like it is nice, and in Digimon, your turn is your turn, right? Even though you can trip over the Karis and trip over the Mimis, you get to do your plays and the plays you wanted to. And whatever that is, whatever the play you do, it influences your opponent's play by the memory gauge system. So I think that Bandai hit the nail on the head with the memory gauge. I think they're doing well. I think they just need to be very cognizant when they print cards um, that alter memory, aka like the spark cards, jack raids, those things, ice wall, blanket effects that really have no interaction. That's not fun.
And we see how devastating some of those cards are too, right? Like checking Ice Wand security loses to losses, Heimer Spark, and like you said with Kari with Yellow Hybrid, they're gonna have like 4 of those out. and that's essentially 2 ice walls. I mean 2 hammer sparks.
Yeah, it's just stuff you have to deal with over. It doesn't happen that you always get 4 carries, but when you get 4 carries, yikes.
Yeah.
And I think we all know how Hammer Spark feels in security, aka Danny, when he hits
Oh my
3
God.
Hammer Sparks back to back to back. Like it's a little much. Although nowadays we've all basically built our decks with the Gazimons, the Madoki Betamons to outplay those cards because they're just so prevalent.
Yeah.
But yeah, that also just limits deck design, which is a whole another topic. But
Mhm.
yeah, Digimon.
So I kind of want to ask Dan Vang. You're regarded as the greatest, like the best, consistently Digimon player in North America. How does it feel like having this amazing title and then like going to a different game? Does it feel like you have a need to overperform in that game? Do you feel any like if you don't perform in that game, do you feel like you get any backlash for it? Like how does that like work?
Sure, great questions. It's nice to be regarded like that, but obviously, anyone who talks to me, I'm just like, no, 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 no. I'm just a guy who likes to play the game. I got lucky. I practice a lot. I have, great deck builds from people because I'm not the one building them. I'm not gonna lie to you. But it's really just for me. I just like playing. I don't think I'm the best. I could care less. I think the part where I started is I just want to have fun in this game, and I like what everyone's saying. You play this game because you like the mechanics. You like it because it's easy to learn, right? It's obviously harder to get better at, but it's easy to learn. And in regards to other games, I played DB Dragon Ball Super casually. I used to play, that was my main game until I moved to Digimon. Yu-Gi-Oh! Casually, I still play Heroes. That's just the deck I'm gonna play if I ever play again competitively. But going to different games, I don't feel like the need, like I have to be the best. I have to do this because I think maybe it just speaks to me as a person. I'm pretty lax overall. Like I want to do well, but it's not the end of the world. Like for all of us playing Digimon, we're lucky enough to play something, and if we do well, we do well, right? But we're lucky in our lives to even just have fun in this game and play something. Like any other game you do, the mechanics are so different, right? For the most part, like if you don't do well in one game, that's okay. Maybe you didn't practice, like what DifferentFight was saying, right? If you're not kept up on some of the meta, sometimes like someone will play something and your brain goes, I don't know how to respond to this, or I don't know the best response to this. It's like anything. Everyone has strengths. Everyone has things to improve on. Like, just because you're good at one game doesn't mean you'll be good at the other game. There's some people who are good at both games. Like, like Kamal. If you guys know Kamal from Yu-Gi-Oh, like he's good at like multiple games, but it's hard to be good at multiple games. You know what I mean? But that's just me. I don't know what else you asked because I forgot. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I kind of feel like with Digimon, we've become kind of spoiled because every other day there's a tournament and there's consistently like a good online tournament or now in-person tournaments where we get like this insane prize support, like beautiful altards and stuff like that. So there's a reason to consistently play the game. And like I feel like with like Vanguard, uh I feel like it would be amazing if they put on more like online tournaments, like consistent tournaments, because I do feel like there are points, at least in our area, where it declines just because like they're waiting for a new set and there's nothing to really like look forward to. And I know with Yu-Gi-Oh they started doing it again, but at least they were holding it down with like online tournaments here and there. So like how do you feel about like the need for the company to like consistently push out tournaments like this now that the online format has become such a big thing? Do you think that companies should put out more? Like I feel for sure with Vanguard, I feel like they should put out more. I know that Springfest is coming up. I'm gonna be at Chicago, but I would like to know what you guys feel about it with online and in tournament presence.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
no, you
Oh,
can
no,
go.
go ahead.
Okay, you're good. So this is something I think about a lot. So I played in my first Yu-Gi-Oh regional. was an online one, and it was the worst experience I've ever had in a tournament. Period. And I think it's something that it was a bad experience because of how unorganized it was. It took us 3 hours to get to round 2. It was awful. Um, and some what I think has blossomed Digimon's success so much is it launched at like the height of the pandemic, early pandemic, height of the pandemic, and it really had nowhere to go but online. And so we
Mhm.
see Bandai took a risk going for these online events and say, if it works, it works. You know, here's our cards on the table. If it works, it works. If not, you know, not a loss. We have one set out. And we see it like Danny said, it launched into this massive thing. I could at any minute play in any tournament on any day of the week that I wanted to. I could go to the GFG server, play on Mondays. I could go to PPG, play on Tuesdays. I could go to Mario's, play on Wednesdays. Like it doesn't matter. I can always find a tournament to play in if I'm feeling to play in a tournament. And that is the unique situation I think Digimon is in, and other card games are struggling to break into that niche because they were hesitant of it at first anyways. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but Vanguard had 2 online events. I want to say it was the Springfest after set 1 dropped for Overdress,
Yep.
and then BRO 2021,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Okay. And I played in both of those, and both of those were actually super fun and really well handled. But I don't know enough about Bushiroad to know why they don't do it more, and so I think Chris can probably enlighten on that, maybe.
Yeah, so you made a really good point because the thing is that, as you said, like Digimon was born in the pandemic, and because the one really cool thing about Digimon, especially I remember the first big webcam event like in December. This was like 2 weeks after the game came out.
Yes.
A lot of the people I met, they had never played a TCG before. Like this was their first game, and they were just happy to be there. So a lot of the Digimon player base didn't know anything else. Like they had no other prior experience. They were just happy to play an event, even if it meant online. And so they were kind of nurtured in this environment of like online play is like the status quo. Like they just didn't really know anything else, and all they knew about regionals is stories from other people from other games because there was no Digimon in-person regional before that, right? So whereas for any game that existed prior to the pandemic, whether that's Vanguard or Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon, like or anything, like those player bases were very much not looking forward to online play because they were like, oh, I saw the cheaters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh, I don't know if the judges will really do a good job. It's like, but the connections, but this, that. Like, I remember when we first had, like, Springfest Online, which was last year, May and June and July. So, like, it was basically like, nothing was May and June. So they basically just, like, stretched out, like, over every weekend of those months. And I remember so many people were like, yeah, seems cool, but nah, because I would rather just play in my locals because online events are not for me and I hate online. And like all these other card game communities, they weren't brought up in that atmosphere. And only the new players were actually like, they were the same as Digimon, right? They only knew online. And so that's kind of why I think it struggled to kick off for a lot of these games. And then with Bushiroad, I think the big thing is that they want to stream all of their events. Like they want people to see these events for them to be documented. Whereas that's, in my opinion, one of like the double-edged sword with Digimon is that it was really awesome that I could always like every month there was a major. It was like either Evo Cup or a regional or like something like that, like with big prizes and like cool entry prizes and all that stuff. And it was cool, but my issue was that it was never streamed. It was like until very recently, and it was rarely. I mean, some people would record their stuff and like show it off, or some people would stream their tournament perspective, but it wouldn't be like a commentated official like tournament stream. And as a result, like for the first few, I almost want to say the first year almost. Even I would go to these tournaments and I wouldn't even know who won. Like I would end up like, top 16, but I was like, I don't know who won. It's like they didn't make a big deal of it. Like Bandai didn't do a huge congratulations post. Like there wasn't a stream that was like, congratulations to this guy, he won, he's the best in Europe, he's the best in the States, things like that. And I felt like that was also sort of lacking for these events, is like the coverage was just really like it was cool the events exist and everyone played in them, but the coverage really didn't exist that much to kind of like give that kind of like or sort of that status to the people that really put in the time and won them all. So that's, I think, why Bushiroad is more limited with what they do, and that's why we have them basically every half a year, is because they spend a lot of time preparing to make it a huge thing for not just people playing, but also people watching. And I don't like, I agree, it's probably not the best prior to now, because Springfest, so for those that don't know, Springfest is basically Bushiroad's like spring circuit, where you basically have, if it's an in-person event, which is in teams format, so 3v3, and every member has to play a different deck, and essentially it would always take place from March until July, and then we would have a little break in July, and then from August until December we would have like the Worlds series, so basically like a bunch of regionals and nationals all over the world that all lead to Japan in January, and then there's the World Finals, and then in like February we have a lull month again of like kind of off season, and then in March Springfest starts up again. So prior to the pandemic we always had events, like it was always going on, like even now in Europe, like I just came back from Belgium 2 days ago, and it was amazing to be back at my first IRL event since the pandemic started, and it really feels like the same kind of atmosphere. And now we have an event this weekend, and then there's going to be another like bunch of events in 2 weeks, and it's basically going all the way until July. And then we're hoping like, hey, if you could make a teams format work IRL with the current circumstances, surely you can make a solos event work, right? Because now you don't need three people sitting next to each other specifically. So I think that's kind of where that comes from. It's like, I agree also with what Danny said. There were definitely a lot of lull periods, especially during the lockdown times, when it was like, okay, I can look forward to new cards and play with them, but there's no big event, so why should I care, right? So for a lot of people, it's like, yeah, they love the game, but they're like, a lot of their motivation came from playing in tournaments. And I think that was a big problem, and I do think they should have done a bit more. There were some things like online shop leagues and stuff, which helped to keep that flame burning. But I think now that we're finally getting out of online events, I know a lot of people that went to like this last weekend to Belgium, and they were like, I cannot imagine playing an online event again. They were just like, nothing compares to how amazing it is to sit in this venue, sit in front of your opponent, have laughs with your friends, stay up in the hotel lobby until 3 a.m., just, play testing and goofing around. And I know a lot of people are just like, yeah, I don't care about online events anymore because IRL events are back. And so I wonder, for me, it's more interesting how Digimon is going to adapt to that, because now we see a lot of people going to these IRL events, but there's still a lot of people that are very much on the fence of like, oh, as long as online events exist, I still have an avenue to play competitively, and I don't necessarily need to care about in-person events because I can still be a good player and prove myself online. But I think a lot of these companies will start to downscale the resources that they pour into online play, so they can put more money and more funding and more resources to make IRL play be the big highlight, which I think that's kind of the status quo of card games.
I mean, I totally agree. IRL, there's nothing that compares to an IRL event like that, of a high scale, a regional YCS, a major, however you want to, you know, call it. And I think last week when we talked, or not last week, but when we talked in the initial podcast, I think True Champion Steven really framed it well. In online events, your highs are very low. When you win your round, who do you have to share it with? You know what I mean? Like, you finished your round, you won. You, in an IRL event, you go to your friends, and you're like, I got it, boys. 2-1, 2-0. I played against this. You have this whole breakdown with your friends and all this good stuff, and you kind of hype each other up. And in the lows, when you lose, your friends are like, you got it next time. Like, you can still top. Like, you're X1, but you keep going. Whereas, your lows on online events, if you lose and you drop, it also doesn't matter. Because you're like, okay, well, I was home, anyways. I'm just going to drop and I'll go, like, do something else with my day. And then when you win, like, winners of these events, who do you know who they are? Like, how do you find them? They're not really, like you were saying, they're not broadcasted. So to me, coming from an older game who did have these IRL events, I'm just looking forward to them coming back. They are a ton of fun. There's nothing that compares to being with your friends in a hotel and just eating crap and playing card games and having fun with your hobby that you enjoy. Um, so I don't think that the online events are here to go anywhere. I think a lot of people do enjoy them, and by offering people more choices, that's always something that a company can do that's just good. Not everyone likes IRL events. People are still cautious. The pandemic isn't over, so it's okay if people don't want to go to these in-person events that are at risk for themselves. You can definitely play online if that's what you like to do. And if you don't like to play online, such as myself, then you just kind of don't do it. You play in your locals, you do your IRL events, and you just keep waiting. And that's where I'm at right now. But I think all these games are really moving in a good direction in terms of now that things are starting to get back to that normalcy, we might start seeing these big IRL events, and I'm just excited to see what the future for Digimon really has in store.
Agreed on all those points. Just to, I guess, piggyback on it, like Quest was really the first IRL, for most people, if any, you know. So that it was nice to just be able to share that and meet like literally everyone, which is pretty cool. And I think as long as there's a little bit of both, you know, I'm saying that we're able to take advantage of each one, because I know there are plenty of people, especially as for the cups, a lot of them capped within like 5 minutes or less. That's ridiculous. Um, yeah, see, and that's ridiculous, So there should be a happy middle ground, if there is any, right? Um, for people to have the IRL or online play, right? Because I enjoy online play just for different reasons, right? Like if, like you were saying, like if I lose, I'm out, I'm good. I got the rest of the day. It's financially, it's easier on a lot of people, right? Like whether you want to play or not, the ability to just pay the entry and there's no travel involved. You can literally play from home or wherever. Compared to, but the lack of social interaction, sharing memories, creating memories with people you just met, people already. That's the real factor of an IRL tournament, right? Because you can go like X10, who cares, right? But you still might have had a great time at the IRL tournament, right? Compared to an online where you're just like, well, I'm kind of losing. I can drop, but that's it. It's the pros and cons to each one. I just
Yeah.
hope going forward we can have more, of each format.
Yeah.
That way we can balance it out. Even if you have to do, I don't know if it's a good idea or bad idea, but if you make an IRL tournament one day and then you have an online the same day, it kind of it obviously divides the competitive nature for each one, but that is you're able to at least provide both formats for people.
So something I wanted to talk about is about the IRL versus online scene for Digimon, at least. I didn't go to either of the fests because for me, both of them were pretty far. And I was going to go to both Miami or Texas, and then I saw the prize support, and I wasn't really into it. So the thing that other card games do that I think if Digimon wants to keep doing these RL events, they need to get better at is having like side events with worthy prizing. So like you said, if I go X10 drop, like I'm still having a good time with the boys, but at the same time, I'd rather drop at X2 when I know I'm not going to top and go play in a side event and win, like for example, like Yu-Gi-Oh giant card, or like I make it a habit to go to Grand Fest every year for, or it used to be called Grand Fest, Chara Expo for buddy not buddy fight Vanguard in California, because it's pretty close to me, and a lot of my friends go and we go and have a good time. And if we go as like a group of 10 guys, and then usually one or two of us will make it to day two, and then if not, we're over playing in side events. Like I think the last one they had like a wrestling match, which was really cool to watch. There was like a really cool buddy fight side event that I did, and I had a lot of fun in that. And you got like worthy prizing for doing it. Like the buddy fight one, you got these like alternate art, like super rare and expensive flags. And so like I got these really cool flags that was cool to put in my deck. And for Digimon, for DigiFest, they had the pack for playing that everyone got, and then they had a pack for topping, and then they had a pack for like free play. And that was pretty much it. There wasn't any other like side events to go do. There wasn't like I said with Yu-Gi-Oh, like a giant card thing. I think that'd be really cool. Or like an uncut sheet, stuff like that. And I think that would make in-person events a lot more enticing, because you're not going to win them every time. And like that, like Dan was saying earlier, you're just there to play the game. If you do good, you do good. But I don't want to be playing in a 9-10 round event just to go X10. I'd rather drop at X2, go do a side event, win some stuff there. And like you see with all the in-person card games, like we were talking about earlier, Vanguard and Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't know about Magic, but Vanguard and Yu-Gi-Oh do really good jobs at this. Yu-Gi-Oh, like I said, they have the giant cards, they have the uncut sheets, and then now they also do Time Wizard, so like Go, Edison, stuff like that. And then Vanguard, the last Grandfest or Char Expo I went to, they had like the side event for the buddy fight. They had a Vanguard one where like if you used a specific deck and you beat like I think it was like 10 other people with it, you got like this cool like pin and like card that said like you were a clan leader, and it was a really cool thing to have. And I just think that's what Digimon's lacking if they want to break into that IRL field, because for like Ultimate Cup, I signed up for 2 of them, and like I said, I'm in the comfort of my home. I don't have to leave anywhere, and I'm not going to keep the cards. I'm not a big Imperial Digimon guy, and so by paying the $30, no matter how I do, I'll make a profit, sell them, and then just go do something else for the rest of my day. If I top or if I go X2, and I just
You
think
mean
that's
sell
something
them to
Digimon could
me,
do.
right?
Yeah, sell
You
them
mean
to
sell
you.
them
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me. Thank
yeah.
Yeah, that's like the one thing that I agree Vanguard does pretty well, is a lot of the side events, and Yu-Gi-Oh does it really well too. And in general, I think maybe it's because I mean these were literally the first Digimon IRL events, and maybe they still need to kind of I imagine that DigiFest was a testing ground to see whether people will even be open to the idea of traveling out, because
True.
this is again a community of people that have never traveled out, and a lot of people that play this game have not played other TCGs, or at least if they did, not as competitively as they do play this game, and only at like a local or a kitchen table level. So I wonder if maybe what by the time that hopefully they do Worlds, and when they do like actual qualifiers for Worlds, maybe there we'll see more events. Like in Vanguard we have, as you said, like the clan leader tournament. So you sign up with, let's say, I guess in Digimon's sense, let's say you sign up for a tournament of a specific color, and you fight everyone else that plays that specific color, and then to be like the leader of that color's player base. Like obviously it's not like an official title or anything, but you win a cool like hot stamped like foil shiny card that shows that you're like you're the leader, and you get like a nice little kind of I think you basically got a huge frame essentially that
Yeah.
gave you that as well. So it'd be cool if they did something like that, or if there's like, let's say, a big release coming up for, let's say, like the week before, or maybe like that weekend of an event, maybe do something to commemorate that, maybe like a draft on the side for people to participate in. I know in like Pokemon they do like cube format, which is like basically specific, like old metas, kind of like drafting decks from old metas and doing that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things to explore, but I would imagine that it's just Bandai not wanting to overcommit when they're just kind of feeling the waters. And I don't know how they did things in Dragon Ball. That's the thing. Like Dragon Ball was their last, their previous venture with a big TCG and with IRL events. And from what I've seen in videos, they looked hype, but I don't know what else they did outside of just like come play tournaments, and that's it.
They
Now,
did pretty good for Dragon Ball. Sorry,
no,
Danny, what were you saying? For Dragon Ball, I was saying they did Fest as well. Same day, obviously, as the State Fest. And they did, when they did webcam tournaments, they were very popular. Pricing was very good, in my opinion. Still pretty good, similar to Digimon. But I think DifferentFight, like what you were saying, Bandai definitely is testing the waters with this one. They see the success, they see the growth. But if you've been keeping up with Bandai a little bit, they're making a third game, which is a little scary, right? They're making a One Piece TCG. So now they have their feet in 3 TCGs, which is a little worrisome.
You're entering Bushiroad area there.
Yeah, when they were managing Buddy Fight, Weiss, and Vanguard, that was a dark time.
And that's what I'm saying. Like 2, like okay, like 2, a little skeptical, but like 3, like it's very, very dangerous. A lot of people are back and forth. Hopefully they can manage 3. Personally, I see if they came to the decision like we got to cut one of these games, they probably. You said you think Digimon will go. You don't.
I don't think there's like.
Yeah,
no way.
I agree. I think we're gonna stay just because of the growth we have right now compared to, and it's like any TCG. Like, Dragon Ball's been around for what 4+ years now. I think as time goes on, there maybe games formats get a little quote unquote stale, right? So I'm hoping at least Bandai is looking in the right direction so they can balance 3 games, because we want the success of any company at this point.
I think it's also like they saw that they were successful with Dragon Ball, although in Europe they really dropped the ball from what I've heard at the start.
Yeah.
But then they had some success with Dragon Ball, although I wouldn't say anywhere near as much as they have with Digimon. But then with Digimon in particular, they're like, all right, so this is the power of our the Bandai IPs. Like Dragon Ball's an IP, Digimon's an IP, Gundam's an IP that they haven't really
That'd
done
be so
much
cool.
with. They did like Japanese card games that kept getting shut down, but they kept trying stuff out. And One Piece is a huge IP, so I think they were like, all
Mhm.
right, our IPs are strong. Card games are quite the opposite of dying, and might as well just keep pushing out our IPs into card games and see how they do. And I think that they probably expect One Piece to do quite well, just because of its
Yeah.
popularity. Although Digimon works so much better as a card game because it has the kind of like monster collection feel. Much like
Yes.
Pokemon. It's like it's not the same as playing just an anime card game, like Dragon Ball or like I guess Vice in a sense. But it has that kind of like childish glee feature, that kind of the monster collecting feature that I think really helps sell it as a card game just on its own.
I
Yeah.
think that's
The
something so
nostalgia
strong
factor.
that's
Sorry,
so
go ahead.
strong about Digimon, right? Because I think there's way more Digimon than there's Pokemon, if I'm right. I think it's like 1,300 or 1,600 Digimon or something. So they have so many Digimon they can do, and then there's so many Digimon they can just keep doing, like Metal Garurumon and like War Greymon and stuff. That I don't see Digimon going anywhere. Anime card games have always like made me skeptical because it's like, okay, how far can they go? How many Gokus can they add? How many Bakugos can they add? Stuff like that. Um, and I think that's kind of what scares me there. So yeah.
So a lot of things were touched upon that I was actually going to talk about. First, I want to go back to the tournament sellouts. Like it's actually insane that we have 512 seats selling out in like minutes. Um, and I want to go from there before I get into the next topic. What do you think can be improved with something like that? With the tournament sellouts.
Sure. This is just thinking about it, and this is not any way. You guys can always correct me and think, like that won't work. Um, I think honestly, if you just release the cap one more, right? So instead of 512, you have 1024. That does possibly potentially add another round. Um, but you'd obviously TOs would have to hire more staff, maybe, right? But it adds a lot more work on the staff side compared to the competitor side because they're just trying to register and make more money. But also maybe thinking about the pricing support too, right? Because then that adds more production or whatever you want to call it for Bandai to provide pricing, or you'd have to do participation pricing for top 512 instead of just anyone signing up. It's a rough way. I'm not an economics major or anything like that, but it's a rough way to think about it. But if you raise the cap or doubled it one more, it potentially just adds one more round, but it adds more work to the staff and a lot of logistics go into it. Like, how do we do the pricing, right? So
So Dan, I love you, but I hate that. I would much
yeah,
rather they
that's
just
okay.
I would much rather they just like add more TOs, right? So instead of having one on each Saturday and Sunday of the month, we have two on each Saturday and Sunday of the month. They're going simultaneously,
Mhm.
because that's less staffing they have to do on the TOs because these aren't big event organizers with the exception of like core TCG. They are
Mhm.
mostly just they're card shops that are slightly bigger than the mom and pop running these events. And also 1,024 is a lot of players in a single Discord. Um, and I think it could have problems there. But also, we've seen in the 512 events, and I was personally a victim of this. If you go X2, you still cannot. There's a chance you could bubble out of top 32. I went X2 in set 5, and I was like, okay, cool. I still got my Altar Greymon. We're good. I can play Max Ready Shoutmon, and I got 33rd because of poor tiebreakers, and I was so upset. Um, and then I think 512 is already a lot, but I get why they have to do it because so many people want to play this game. I think doubling it and going from a 9-round tournament to a 10-round tournament when it's already hard to sit through 9 rounds on online is a lot. And I think it's if they do want to expand online more, I think it's they should just add more TOs and maybe have like a single distributor who sends out the packs so it doesn't go to the hands of the TO. It just all gets funneled into some sort of spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet goes to the distributor, and then all your pricing is shipped out from there.
I do agree with the same day concept. That's what I was considering and talking about it with people. Is like I think it should be same day, multiple tournaments. That could take away from, like, let's say if the tournament streams, it could take away from like the hype of one to another, and then it could influence like certain tournament pools. Like we were seeing with nationals, like there was two servers, and it was like, wow, this server stacked with competitive players, and another was not. So it could enter that kind of thing too. I do think they should probably do multiple days, just to deter from people just buying tickets to like scalp or just taking up spaces for people who actually do want to play with like the actual card game instead of just looking at it as a money funneling thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think we've seen this sort of, like lack of space, events selling out too quick, and like just registration filling up too quick across many different card games. I know Pokemon has had a huge issue right now, where they're having their first internationals in Germany soon, and they basically said they would give a warning when registration opens up, and then they didn't, and it sold out in like a minute or something. And a lot of people that normally go really like a lot of people that normally would top in that event were either getting back from a regional, or it was like in the middle of the night for them and things like that. But now what they've done to sort of try to circumvent that is to do like waves of registration. So you basically open up one main registration wave to let people in, but still do not let it hit the maximum cap. And then they open up another one in order to let more people in, and then another one and it's all at different times. So it kind of like helps people from different time zones, or if they just like if they're at work, that they can register at night and things like that. So I wonder if that would help to kind of like address the selling out issue, because then at least you're giving more opportunities for people to sign up, and not just like, oh, you missed the like 5 minutes of sign up, well, too bad, right?
Mhm. Definitely. And I also wanted to touch about the alternate events at like in-person events. Like so DigiFest saw something amazing, like the Gunslinger events, which was a day two thing, side event where people got to just play the game and they got rewarded for just playing the game casually. And there is something we are testing out in Denver for in person, which is Digimon 3v3s, which we see with Dragon Ball, there's Yu Gi Oh!, and there's Vanguard. Um, so I think that PBG's kind of been like a testing ground a lot of times with Bandai games. Just with the uprise that we started off, like the kind of webcam events with it early on into the 1.0. Uh, so kind of like, what do you guys want to see more? Like the 3v3s, I think it could work. I saw a lot of hype with it. What kind of other events would you want Digimon to try out for like these in-person events?
Popper is one that I'm a big fan of. I did Popper for one of the tournaments I used to hold. I held a Popper one, and then I know Mario and his content creator series had a Popper one, and I think Popper is really cool. Obviously, Digimon's kind of hard to have alternate formats because we don't have like a GOAT format for Digimon. I'm starting to have fondness of 1.5 format. I think that was my favorite format. Pre-ban list.
Can you explain Popper to people who don't know? I know,
Yeah,
obviously, but
yeah. So Popper is only commons, and in the case of Digimon, it includes uncommons as well. So like, think of like Slash Angemon. That's a really really good card in Popper because it is just an uncommon that deletes an 8K or less. So it includes commons, uncommons, and starter deck cards, but not promos. And it's a very very fun event, and I think that's one that Digimon could capitalize on and potentially make a real event. Like you said with 3v3s, I think 3v3s are really cool. I know my team. I have most of us on H Gaming are going to Denver. And we'll be I think have two teams for the team event on day one, and then day two I'll probably either play Yu-Gi-Oh or play another Digimon event. But I think 3v3 is something that they could definitely capitalize on. and it may sound crazy, but I have hopes of like a Commander-esque format in Digimon. I think it could be so cool. I don't know how it'd work, but I think the concept and the groundwork is there. Like, if you have one dude in a separate zone and then you can like digivolve onto him, and when he gets deleted, he just goes back to that zone, and you can just continuously digivolve onto that guy. So yeah,
I like the commander idea, but just for flavor, what if it was just a tamer instead? As in you were playing as a specific tamer. And
it'd be
I'm not
pretty
saying
cool as
like you would
well.
be like start at 3 every time, but like that tamer has a specific effect that you have
So like
immediately
just like
onto the board.
Tai is always active, or like Matt becomes like a once per turn or something. I could see that. That'd
Yeah,
be cool.
something like that, and then you're playing, Matt as your leader or whatever. Something along those lines. But I think Pauper is a great format, specifically for Digimon. There's a lot of the commons, a lot of the quote unquote bulk cards in Digimon are broken. So it's
HPD Lotusmon, so good.
both of the Eismons, by the way. Like the
True.
format is very like expansive, and obviously when you have these higher end cards that sometimes require a whole engine, like for example, you can't play Three Musketeers in Pauper because you need Bellstars. So I think it opens a different avenue for deck building, but I'm not really sure like how we would use it for a side event. Would we use it for like where would these games really start to like thrive? These little side games or side events.
You could probably do like gunslingers with it to try to test out the waters. You could do like a gunslinger popper or a gunslinger like the
Can you
Mario
explain what
games.
Gunslinger is?
It's where you just play random games. It's not like you have to play against a certain person. It's like, hey, you want to play? Like you go to random people and you just play.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that.
But I think Gunslinger was what they like tested out for DigiFest, and it's something I never heard of. But the idea was really, really interesting. Like you just go around and you're like, "Hey, you!" Like, well, maybe like specific people, aka Dan Wayne, had a lot of people go, "Hey, you specifically play me. Like, I want to know what all the hype's about, or True Champion Steven, or Lewis, or these people." Like people would come up to me like, "Let's get a game," and it's a best of one. There's no penalties or anything like that. You win, you win. You lose, you lose. But at the end of the day, they just want people to sit down and just be like playing games, which is an interesting concept. But how do we like put prize support for it? I think
Yeah.
DigiFest did such a good job at it. Although like there are like some caveats, like to the fact that it's like, hey Dan Vang, I'd like to play, but then it's like, all right, as we're about to play, I also scoop, so you win. And then would you scoop to me? And it's like, so some people are doing stuff like that, so it's hard to
Hmm.
keep track of those things. But the idea for it, for which just having people have fun and on a day two on a side event, just like have like no consequence games, that was really cool.
Yeah, I think just to touch base on that, I think the community aspect and the social aspect of that is amazing, right? Just a side event to play, have a good time, whatever the format is. If it's just the best of one, like I pick my friend, I pick someone else to play, that's awesome. I think we are spoiled in prizing. Definitely like that fest prizing was amazing, right? It's like for every 3 wins you get an egg pack or whatever, and that's amazing in itself. But, I don't know, people might crucify me for saying this, but maybe like the pricing shouldn't be as like whoa, right? Maybe it's like okay, you can play a couple games. Once you get like 6 wins, you get these 2 packs instead of like 12 wins. You get these 4 packs, and like everyone's like hard bodying, trying to like play scoop, right? That'll take away, I guess, the I don't know what you call it, cheating, but the quote unquote cheating factor of that part. But the fact that you can just build with someone and just play someone maybe like you've always wanted to play. That's the cool part about the side events. But I don't know if maybe Trupin was touching base on like a more competitive side event. Is that what you were saying?
Kind of, but
Mhm.
I was thinking more of like so different fight. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the clan leader events in Vanguard, how they did it is I had like a slip of paper. I wrote what clan I was using. I'd go find the other person with that same clan on their slip of paper, and we'd play. And it was like you could lose, but you had to get like 10 wins on your thing to get the special like card. Um, so like I think I went like 10-2 and I still got it or something.
Yeah, so it was basically like you had a time limit throughout the day to get that done. In Japan, I think these days now, post-pandemic, or not post-pandemic, but you know what I mean, like getting back to normalcy a little bit. What they do, I think, is they let you play against anyone, So you select, let's say in Digimon Sense, you select the color, but then you play against anyone there, and the tournament staff will pair you against just anyone that's available. But once the, let's say, like 5 hour time limit or 4 hour time limit, whatever, to get your 10 wins or 11 wins is done, they will then look at all the people of that specific color and rank the people according to who got the most wins. So then, like, for example, there'll be, like they'll tell you, like, oh yeah, to have a chance you need to get like 10, but they still will look at the person who got the most, and then if somebody managed to get 13 wins in 4 hours, then they'll be the one to take it. So, and it kind of depended on, like, if a color was less popular, or like, like the Clan of Vanguard was less popular, it would usually need less wins. And then if for the really popular ones, it'd be like, oh, you got to win 13 times in 4 hours, or good luck, buddy. So that's kind of how it worked. So it's either you pair against the same, or you pair against randoms, but then you rank people in that same category.
Yeah, so I was playing Gold Paladin, so there's nobody else at that event, on that side event, so I got it no matter what. But the what I was thinking for the Digimon events is something like that, where it's less like I want to go play you. Like I see Dan Vang across the room, and I like JoJo approach him. Less of that, and more of like, this is who your opponent is. Here's this sheet. Like, record who wins, who loses, something like that. Because it keeps the free play aspect where there's not a lot on the line. It's just, you get X wins throughout the day. It doesn't matter if your losses outweigh your wins. You'll get X prize. And less of like, because then we see people like Dan, Steven, like Mario, people like that who, uh, a lot of the bigger faces are going to get swarmed, and a lot of the people who like either don't know who those people are or like just want to play the game are going to have a harder time finding an opponent, which means a harder time of getting those packs.
I actually really like that idea. That idea actually sounds really good. I also had the idea for I think they should
Hire me,
probably
Bandai.
I think they should also probably do like draft side events since they do have a sealed draft format. Maybe start doing drafts more. Um, I think drafts would probably be something really cool since it's only really done during like pre-release. I think it's something to explore too. You get to keep the cards. Maybe they
Hmm.
could do a thing where it's only like how Magic does, where it's like you don't get any super shiny cards. It's just commons, and it's like mostly stuff like that. So it could be competitive in that sense.
I could see that. I think you could do draft popper format, I guess, right? A little bit of both. I think draft could be fine, especially for EX, because everyone's got like a bunch of EX boxes sitting somewhere. So if Bandai's like, well, you guys can do a draft one. We're like, all right, we're just gonna, use this product anyway, and everyone will have a good time regardless.
Would you have like eggs like lands then in Magic where you just give them out for free? Because EX doesn't have eggs.
Ooh,
Yeah,
shit,
it's
good
not like
call.
every pack where it comes with eggs.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe, maybe. Sorry, go ahead, Danny.
I think anything could be discussed with stuff like that. I think they'll probably have like a draft sealed set specifically for it, maybe for tournaments. That would be pretty cool. And I'll have like maybe a specific stamp or something. Something to make it like worth more. And now I'm kind of going to a different territory there. I think
Altar Omnis for playing.
yeah, like alter common omnis. Um, but also coming to something that was discussed, True Pain, you said that they should get more TOs. Now, there is a issue with that. Like how do you trust someone with your company's name? Because I don't want to like bring up
And I think I know who you're talking about.
yeah, like I don't want to bring up like a certain events that happened.
Hmm.
But we saw that Digimon got the heat instead of the people running the event, and so like it's a double-edged sword. It's like yeah, we can get more TOs to do this, but like how do we fully trust them that they're gonna do the job correctly? And like there are a lot of players who probably were discouraged from playing more because of the events and how everything went in place with these events like the stuff that happened. So it is a double-edged sword in that sense, but I also do see a positive with other companies probably allowing other TOs, established TOs, to take care of these tournaments that we were talking about. Like Vanguard and Bushiroad, I mean, is very set on like just making sure they're running it so there's no issues. And Konami often does the same thing where they run it and they make sure everything is done correctly. What do you feel if they test out the waters, allowing other TOs to at least run more tournaments so there's more things for players to do?
So I think I sort of answered this when I brought it up initially. Um, the the problem with certain TOs is that we'll see the product not get shipped because the TOs are in charge of shipping it. And that leads to either other TOs or Bandai themselves having to pick up the slack and then backlash from the community towards that TO, which the TO then reflects to Bandai. And that's what we've seen in the past. So what I briefly brought up earlier is that when you sign up for these events, I'm a big spreadsheet guy. I really like spreadsheets. I use them for almost everything. And I think it would be fairly simple to set up a spreadsheet for, okay, these are the 512 players that signed up. And then you can log that spreadsheet as the tournament's going in between rounds. So if Dan Vang drops round 3, I'll mark Dan Vang on the spreadsheet or have it automated that he went X2 X3 drop. And he will get the base pricing. And these spreadsheets at the end of the event can then be sent off to the main Bandai distributor, whoever's producing these prize cards, and have it shipped from there. That way, these cards never touch the TO's hands, and they don't get stuck in limbo. And I think that's actually a quite optimal way of doing it, because in the end, people are people, whereas at a distributor, they're handling these things daily. They're printing the cards there, and then they'll just go straight into the package, go to where they're going. And then it's more, the TO is literally just running the tournament, and they're not handling any of the cards that you are playing for or trying to receive.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. Jasco. Jasco runs My Hero, the card game, and that's what
They do
they've
it
kind of
so
been doing.
good.
Yeah, that's what they've kind of been doing. So I think that's also pretty good. Um, to talk about, like, it makes it more efficient for the TO just to focus on running the tournament instead of waiting for the product to also ship, and them getting that backlash as well. But like different fight. How do you feel about like Vanguard maybe allowing TOs to run the games?
So I think they are these days with both IRL events and online events. They've essentially just outsourced to third parties. So BRO was run by a company named Elephant, who is basically like they are the company that does everything for esports in Southeast Asia. So they basically run like League of Legends, Valorant, virtually everything. A lot of fighting game events, like for Tekken, for Street Fighter, etc. So they are the ones that handle things for NA and Southeast Asia, Oceania. And then for Europe, they outsource to ENTCG, who are basically they're essentially a store, but also TOs that program their own tournament bot that they use on Discord, which essentially does virtually everything. Like all you got to do is like input your round results, and it pairs you up, tells you which like voice channel to go to. Like it will do virtually everything for you and run the tournament on its own. So it's very impressive how they've done that, and that's why I think Bushiroad also tries to keep their contact with them quite regular for these events, because they also did the previous one. And then for IRL events, because of the current situation and like travel being quite difficult, I know that they've also outsourced to, especially in Europe, I think it's mostly Blackfire, who are the main distributors for also Digimon. They're one of the main distributors in Europe, and they also are the main ones doing organized play for a lot of games. For Digimon, they don't do as much because Digimon is a tournament center in Europe for the most part. But they also outsource, but I guess they don't really like put it out there. Like with Digimon, when you sign up for an event, you know who it's run by, right? Whether it's Core, whether it's tournament center, etc. Whereas for Vanguard, I think they started doing that more, but people are still very much like, oh, I'm just going to a Bushiroad event, even though there's not a single Bushiroad employee in the actual venue, right? So they do it, but I think they just do it a bit more like, low key, I guess.
Do you think they should give it out to more people?
I think it would be good, but again, it's like when it comes to online play, they want to keep streaming things, which means there's a lot of prep that has to go into it. So then it's a little bit difficult. And I think it would be cool, but looking at the current schedule right now for like starting from this month to the end of July, we have an IRL event almost every weekend until July. So honestly, I think we're honestly in a pretty good spot for Vanguard when it comes to that. Like both in every region, like there isn't one every single weekend in every region, but when you look at how it spreads all over the world, there's basically something going on every weekend, and so you can kind of look forward to those kind of like meta developments and how things will go. So I think they could make use of it, but at the same time, you run a huge risk because then if things go wrong, people oftentimes will blame the company first, right? They'll blame Bandai or they blame Bushiroad or they'll just blame the game itself rather than blaming a incompetent TO. And I think that that's just a risk that they're trying to avoid for the most part.
No, for sure, 100%. That's a really big thing, and we see like the double-edged sword with like the goods and the bads of lending out. Um,
Yeah, and Digimon had that for sure a couple months ago too. So I think it's a really tricky situation to be in because you want to try to just have a good relationship with like your main TOs, and then even if you do expand, your main TOs might go like, "Oh, why didn't you just ask us again? Like, why didn't you just ask us to do it like this time as well?" So I think I think there's a lot of things that go on in the back end that prevent these companies from spreading that out, I'd say.
and moving on to a different topic, we mentioned IPs, and honestly, the the back end of IPs that Bushiroad has, especially with Y Shorts, I kind of would like to see more of that implemented into Vanguard, like the Attack on Titans, the Seven Deadly Sins, and stuff like that, the JoJo's. I think they would make pretty cool, amazing Vanguard decks. And Yu-Gi-Oh, they don't have direct IP licensings, but they do kind of cool things like Cosmo, where it was like a Wizard of Oz and like Star Wars, and they do have like the kaiju's and stuff. And with Bandai, they have all these IPs too. Do you think you would want to see kind of more like with Battle Spirits and Digimon kind of thing? Would you want to see some kind of mixture? Do you think it'd be cool to have some TCG exclusive kind of like Digimon made to kind of add to like the lore? Would you want to see Yu-Gi-Oh to have like official like let's say like Godzilla or something like that? And maybe Vanguard getting more of that space, to have more IPs that they're starting to get now. Like, what is your thoughts on like having like actually set things to come into the game that we all love as like IPs?
So I think collab sets. Oh, sorry.
No, my bad. I was just gonna make a quick point on also Magic. Magic has done a really cool job at introducing IPs into their game. Like recently, I think they added like League of Legends S cards, just like as different printings of cards that pre-existed, just different artworks.
Yeah, the
It's been
secret
doing a
layers.
really cool. Yeah, it's been doing a really like interesting job at like doing this sort of integration. But I do like the idea of creating a Digimon that's just a card game Digimon that was born out of the TCG. Now, will they take this route? Who knows? But kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean Pulsemon is kind of like that, where it's like it was made for the Vital Bracelet, and then they just kind of milked it, and it became a card too. So I think it'd be nice. Collabs themselves are a very slippery slope. In Vanguard, we have collabs like every so often. In the last 2 years, we had Token Rambu, which is like a PC game in Japan of like sword boys. It's like old Japanese like swords that turn into beautiful anime dudes. Then we had Monster Strike, which is like a popular gacha game in Japan. Now we have like Shaman King, as well as Record of Ragnarok, which are two like Netflix anime. But these are very rare, so it's like we'll have like two, let's say like BT5, BT6, and then a collab set to fill in the gap because there's like a dead month, and then we'll have like like an EX set and then BT7, right? That's kind of like how the schedule often looks. But people really hate collab sets. Like some people really love them, some people really hate them. They're like, this isn't part of my game. This isn't part of like what makes this game my game. This isn't what makes Vanguard Vanguard. This isn't what makes like this game that game. But at the same time, especially in Japan, collab sets are really powerful in getting people that originally never heard of your game to be interested because they're like, oh, I like Shaman King. Oh, what? There's Shaman King cards. I guess I'm gonna buy some Shaman King cards and learn this game. And it's really powerful in getting people into the game, and that's why Battle Spirits is all successful because, they have Battle Spirits as its own IP, as its own anime, and then they did a Digimon collab set, and then sold like crazy. Did a Kamen Rider collab set, sold like crazy, and then now they have an Evangelion collab set, sold like crazy. So it's like it depends how much you promote it, how much space does it take up in the yearly release schedule. But I think for Digimon it would be kind of hard. Like, it's kind of the same as like Pokemon doing a collab set. It feels kind of off to bring in things from other IPs because of how delicate the world is, I suppose. I think Digimon has more leeway with stuff like the Metabots collab they had, and potentially with other Bandai IPs, maybe. But I feel like they already have Battle Spirits for that as their game. But then the same argument can be said for Bouchard. Like they had Vice Schwartz as their collab game, but then they still put collabs in all of their other card games, essentially, just to kind of like flex their power as a company, being able to collab with things from other brands. So I think it's a slippery slope, and I think you would definitely, like, if that was brought into Digimon, I think you have a lot of people going like, "Oh, this isn't Digimon. This doesn't belong here. Like, get this shit out of here. I don't want to look like you'd have a month of card reveals of like, let's say like, I don't know, like Attack on Titan in Digimon. Like that just, I think
Yeah.
people would just be bothered by that, or like some other monster collection, like I don't know, freaking Yokai Watch, for example. I think that would maybe fit the aesthetic a bit more. But people would go like, "That's not my Digimon." Like even if the effects are busted, they're like, "Well, now why did you print these busted cards? They're not even my Digimon." It's a very slippery slope. So I think it's worth it for grabbing people from outside the game, but it needs to be done at a very good pace where it's like not too much, and because that's an easy way to just put your community to sleep because they're like, "Well, I'll come back when they stop doing these collabs." And it's been a month, and we were back to reveals for BT8, BT9, BT10, etc. Right?
So I agree with DifferentFight here. I'm actually I don't want to sound like a hater, but I'm a pretty big hater of collab sets. I love Vanguard to death, but it bores the shit out of me whenever there's a collab set. Because I follow all these like people who like sum up the streams. Um, and when they're revealing Vanguard cards, like they were doing the set 5, which is a really cool set, and it's like based off like the Vanguard lore and not the anime. And I was so excited when they were like showing the cards, and then they'd be like interrupted with like a Shaman King reveal or like a Record of Ragnarok reveal, and they'll have like the most boring effects or the coolest effects, and I don't care, and I'm here for Vanguard, and I'm not trying to see like Shaman King cards, and like when I go to see like what the new premium collection reveals are on Facebook, I'm on like one of these people's pages, and I just see a bunch of Shaman King cards, and I'm like, no, I want to see like the Tachikaze cards, or I want to see the Nova Grappler cards. Like I don't want to scroll through a few scrolls of Shaman King to find the Vanguard cards. And so for Digimon, I think Pulsemon is like the closest they can get because it is still a Digimon IP and it was created for Digimon. But if Gokumon or Luffymon or Narutomon came into the Digimon card game, I'd be pretty upset. So yeah,
Narutomon.
believe it.
I think if there were to be a collab, it doesn't have to be anything like crazy drastic. Like the Metabot Omnimon thing, that would be like kind of maybe if they just wanted to put like one card in as a collab, that would be just my preference, I should say, if anything. They don't have to go too crazy with collabs.
I don't think they fully have to create if they were to collab like this again. They do whatever you want, man. You guys obviously know what you're doing, so thus far,
Yeah.
don't take my advice. But if we were talking about collabs in any in any sense, you could just change the art of the card and just be like, oh, it's still Omnimon. It still has like the effects. It could be like literally BT1 Omnimon, same printing, same everything, but then you just change the art to I don't know something else, and you call that a collab if you want. But
That's true.
then again, what would necessarily be the point of that stuff? But um, I until recently, because I don't know much lore of Digimon, I'll be honest with you guys. I just found out that Pulsemon was created for like the Digimon Fitbit thing, and I was mind blown. I was like, wait, this wasn't in the show. Like this was like a thing that was created outside of it. And like, yeah, I was like, whoa. So that was definitely a really cool idea of how they were able to do it within their own game and within their own IP. So maybe they'll create like a cardamon where it's like a dude that always cuts your deck and you brick or something. So
Card
we'll
on the
see.
people.
Just
But
broke your opponent's deck.
you get a stack of your opponent's deck. That's his effect.
So my idea with like Digimon, so like we talked about the Metabot collab. So it would be kind of something like that. Maybe you would use stuff that would you could actually use like let's say Gundams. You make like for exclusively to start off the Digimon TCG, you would create a Gundam-esque looking Digimon or something like that, like how Yu-Gi-Oh did with the Cosmos and the Kaiju's and stuff like that. And maybe with Vanguard, I feel like it's maybe like not the issue with the collab, would the issue be the IP? What if they did Naruto with Vanguard? Because the My Hero set absolutely flew, but My Hero is super popular. What if they did something like Demon Slayer for Vanguard? Is the IP what would cause the issue?
Yeah, it's always the IP, and it's always like, especially in Vanguard, they with collab sets they really prioritize the English side, I suppose. And I remember in Vice, so Vice, for those that don't know, is a game that's entirely built of only collabs. So every set release is a different anime or different game, and there are some English exclusives. So, for example, like Attack on Titan would come out in English either at the same time as Japanese, so like literally simultaneous release, or even before. And then I think now with Tokyo Revengers is like an anime that is really popular overseas, so they're doing a simultaneous release again. And they've done some exclusives like Adventure Time, which is very much like, I think that's only something that English players really like. So I think it's hard to really dictate what it is. We always joke around. It's like, oh, all they gotta do is a Fortnite collab set, and that's it. We got them. We win the TCG
Let's
game. Like
go.
everyone plays Vanguard. We win. But it's hard to really hit the nail on the on the head like that. And I think Shaman King is probably the closest they've gotten with it, because that's at least something that's very like people look back at it nostalgically, just like Digimon. Um, but it's kind of difficult at this point. We just kind of wait and see what they give us. If people care, they care. If they don't, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't care about a collab, they weren't made for you in the first place. They were made to get people in from outside, right? So you're already hooked on the game you're playing, and even if they give you stuff that you're not necessarily into, the majority of the releases of the year are things that you're interested, but this one product every 6 months is made for people that aren't already enfranchised, and it's to get them enfranchised.
But what if you double dip and I'm already into the game and then it's like a really cool collab? Now that's
Then it's a win-win, right? Then it's a win-win.
no, I know, but I completely agree with your point. I think it's just a good way to get people that aren't interested into your game interested in your game. And I think Digimon, we haven't spoken about this, but regarding the fact that we've spoken about so many TCGs, I think it needs to be said. Regarding the simplicity of Digimon, like it looks super. Well, it doesn't look. It is super easy to play, but it's definitely much more complex once you get to the competitive side of things. So it's deceptively simple, so simple that they were able to sum up the entire mechanics of the game into a 3-minute song.
Yes,
And
sir.
to do that for Yu-Gi-Oh, I think you guys have to write like a whole rock opera or something along those
Actual
lines.
musical.
Yeah, I don't even know. I've tried to explain card games to people before, and it's like again, my main game back in the day was Yu-Gi-Oh or was Magic. Magic is a little bit more simpler in terms of like explaining the mechanics, but it's so I don't even know where to begin. I've tried it so many separate times, and I still don't know how to teach people how to play Yu-Gi-Oh. It is so it comes down to like, well, bro, you just gotta play it, or like, good luck. I don't even, I don't really know what to say, but Digimon is so special in that fact that they can just you can sit down. I can teach you how to play the game in under 10 minutes, and then you'll play it. I mean, you may not do well, but hey, you at least know how to play. So
Yeah,
definitely, getting people to come and try your game. I think it's a really good technique. So these collab sets might be something to look forward to for people that don't really have that nostalgic feeling towards Digimon itself, like they didn't watch the show growing up, or yeah, or something like that.
yeah. 100% agree, because like this last weekend when we were at our major for Vanguard, one of my friends was like, because we brought Digimon decks with us just to play with some of the friends that were there, And one of our friends was like, "Oh, I always wanted to kind of learn it, so can you teach me?" I was like, "Yeah, let's sit down." And he understood it from the first game we played. Like, it's such a straightforward game. He OTK'd me with the Jespawn deck I gave him immediately, and I was like, "Wow, cool! Like, that's you got it all. You can play tournaments now. Like, it's that easy."
So kind of building off what you guys were talking about, I don't mean to change the subject off collab sets, but the thing with Digimon is it is such a simple game, right? Like everybody in the house, I go to college, so I live with a bunch of my friends and my girlfriend. They all play, and my girlfriend saw me play online. She wanted to learn. We sat down, played one game. She learned it. But there is something to be said. It is, I want to say, deceptively simple because I think from watching players play, there's something you can clearly tell when someone is a good player and someone is not a good player. Just lines of play people don't see, using the memory optimally. So while it is an easy game to learn and teach, I do think it is a
It's hard to
hard game to
master.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Like my example is look at any of the loop players. Ying and Diego, human and battle, are some of the best purple and loop players. Period. I think. Uh, if you watch Diego play in the DigiFest Miami, I think it was round 6 or something. He was playing against Primitive, and Primitive dropped 3 Eismon on him. And most people in that scenario would be like, "Oh, it's over. GG. Have fun." Diego was at 1 memory, and it was one of the greatest things you ever see. He won that turn before he could lose to Primitive, and it was one of those things where it's like you can clearly tell skill difference in players. Um, I'm not saying Primitive's bad. I'm just saying if you put Diego up against someone who just picked up Loop for the first time, or Ying against someone who just picked up Loop for the first time, it would be a very noticeable skill difference, and that's what I
Yeah.
think is so beautiful about
It's
Digimon.
night and day. Ying and Diego are like beasts.
Yeah,
Wait,
crazy.
DigiFest Miami.
yeah.
Oh, great! I was able to commentate round 6, and that game was.
Oh my, Diego literally
Oh
makes
my
me pull it up all the time. He's like, "Yeah, we just gotta watch it. We just gotta watch it."
It was so clean, dude. I couldn't get louder because we were commentating, but
Uh-huh.
if I was not commentating, I would have just. Oh my god,
It's one
it
of
would've gone wild.
I think that and when Tyler fought Steven are like the 2 Digimon matches that I point to people and I'm like, this game can get so intense because that mirror with Diego, he brought it full circle when he was in checkmate. And then Steven versus Tyler. Tyler dropped that Nidhoggmon, if you guys know what I'm talking about. And
Busted.
And Dan Vang versus Human. And
oh, that was
that's
okay.
Also true. Yeah.
was
That was
also
okay. I'm
was-
seeing.
Like how you said, the game it looks super simple. Then like anything, that's what's really cool about the game. You try it out and you're like, oh, this is really easy. I can play Jessamine. I can play Rookie Rush. And then you start playing more and you're like, whoa. When you start playing these mirrors, you start playing these good players. You're like, I can tell where the skill difference exists in this game, and that's really nice. And I also like to say it wasn't versus Primitive. It was versus Dorgatron Prime.
Oh my
That's
bad.
who Diego played. It's totally fine. But the only reason I know is that I literally commented again and I was like, this game is cracked.
I also want to put it
So
forward that
good to watch.
Dorkatron Prime also 2-0'd me round 5 with his triple Eismon play on turn 2. I was like, yep, that's pretty good.
Confirmed Dan is bad.
Yeah, Eismon may be a good card, and there may be a reason for it disappearing in the next format. Very, very powerful.
All right, guys. I want to come to the end of the podcast. It's been like a lot of amazing talks. Actually, is really interesting to see everyone jump back and forth with all these amazing ideas and like comments and like just like feedback. Which is good because feedback is always good. Any closing statements you guys want to make to like about like Digimon or any other card games or just like tournaments or players or anything else?
Are these like shout outs or what?
Whatever you want it to be.
All right, 2. First of all, go subscribe to True Pain Gaming. We're about to hit 2K subs, and when I do, I'll be covering the Digimon card game song. Secondly, huge shout out to H Gaming, my boy Diego, my boy Carlos, everyone on that team. Without you guys, I wouldn't be here today. And thank you to PPG for being absolutely goated and inviting me on the podcast.
You done?
Oh, well, I'd like to thank anyone that's listening into the podcast. It's definitely great to have you guys as supporting the Digimon community and what we try to do here with PPG. I'm just excited to be here, excited to get to talk to all these big figures from the Digimon card game, get to see where they're coming from, see what they're thinking about the game and what they do outside of the game. It's just really nice, and I'd like to continue to grow this community alongside PPG. So thanks for having me, and thanks for your continued support.
Different fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna basically just be parroting a lot of what the guys have said already, but I really appreciate you having me on. It's fun to get these opportunities to really talk about these kind of issues and topics with other, great minds from the game. I definitely think that I'm considered more on the outside, like on the outskirts of the community, although I really do love the Digimon card game as well. But it's always fun to kind of be able to bring this comparative sort of paradigm into the discussion as well. And I want to see the game succeed. I think it's the game that's come out in recent years that I think actually has a chance to stick around for quite a while. Back when Vanguard first came out, people also felt very similar about, it was like a big game, really blew up at the start, stole like 60% of Yu-Gi-Oh's player base, and, everyone was kind of rooting for the game. And then after a couple, after like 2 years passed, they're like, okay, is this going to continue to stand tall? And we're 11 years in and still going strong. And I think that Digimon is in a very similar boat where we've had a lot of card games come and go over the years, and they last 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. But I think Digimon has the power to really stick around this time around because it was both created in an unfortunate time, but also very fortunate timing when other games were just having terrible metas, and a lot of people were looking for something fresh and something new to try out. And now it's nurtured this really cool community that I think I'm very interested to see how it's going to transform now going into more IRL play and things like that. But above all else, thank you to PPG, to Danny for hosting, and PPG for having me. It's been a great honor.
The boy Dan Vang.
Like everyone said, thank you to you for hosting us, getting us on here. Great topics that, we can always reflect and hear and listen to in the future too, build upon. Like DifferentFight was saying though, this is the point. This game is easy to get into. The timing was essentially really good for them, because when's the last time you heard a game that would, like during 1.0, 1.5 format, people were fiending to find product. Like, just hope, Bandai, if you're listening, with the gameplay design, let's take it easy. We don't have to go like 110% every set. We want longevity in the game. Hopefully, depending on what they decide with side decks, if they want to increase it, if they want to take it away, make it permanent, whatever, just make sure that it helps the game design as well. We don't want another repeat of an ice wall kind of incident. You know what I'm saying? But thanks for having me. Shout out to the boys, GFG, Guy Force Gaming. Shout out to Digital Academy, H Gaming, all the other, great teams in this community.
All right, guys. I want to thank all of you for coming on and being such pillars in not just Digimon but in card games in general. It was a amazing, beautiful podcast that we had. Hopefully, let's get another one going soon. I definitely want to talk to you guys more about different topics at a different time. And I would like to say thank you guys for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time, keep enjoying card games.
Support Pro Play Games on Patreon.